My name is Gabriel, a humble villager in the small hamlet of Ravenswood, nestled amidst the dense forests of 16th century Europe. Our lives were governed by the cycle of seasons, and the year 1570 had been a particularly harsh one. Starvation and sickness had claimed the lives of many, leaving the rest of us to cling to hope and our tenuous grasp on life. As the night fell upon us, the sky was clear and adorned with countless twinkling stars, yet the full moon, radiant and imposing, sent shivers down my spine. It was a night like any other, but something felt different. The air seemed to hum with an unsettling tension, and the usual chorus of nocturnal creatures was eerily muted. The villagers went about their evening chores with a cautious eye, well aware of the legends and stories that were whispered around campfires. A shadow hung over the community, the legend of the beast that prowled these very woods during full moons. They called it the werewolf, a monstrous creature cursed to roam the night, seeking flesh and blood. Many believed it to be a product of fevered imaginations and old wives' tales, but not I. My father's father had spoken of a harrowing encounter he had in his youth. He had seen its burning crimson eyes and heard its guttural growl echoing through the forest. As I returned from the well, carrying a bucket of water on my shoulders, a cold wind whispered through the trees. I quickened my pace, desperate to reach the safety of my small cottage. The moon bathed the surroundings in an ethereal glow, casting elongated shadows that danced on the forest floor. My heart pounded in my chest, and every snap of a twig sent me jumping with terror. Upon reaching the edge of the village, I glanced back at the woods. There, standing amidst the shadows, was a figure, hulking and imposing. My blood turned to ice, and I nearly dropped the bucket in my fright. A chill ran down my spine as the figure's eyes met mine, reflecting the moonlight in a haunting crimson hue. It was the werewolf, and it had come for me. With adrenaline coursing through my veins, I dropped the bucket and ran as if the devil himself was at my heels. I screamed for help, but my voice was swallowed by the dense foliage. Panic consumed me as I realized I was being hunted, and there was no escape. The village houses were within sight, and I pushed myself to run even faster. The looming silhouette of the werewolf followed close behind, the sound of its snarls growing louder with each step. Desperation led me to take a sharp turn into the thicket, hoping to lose the creature amidst the tangled underbrush. My heart thudded painfully in my chest as I tried to quiet my ragged breath. The moon's light filtered through the canopy, casting ghostly shadows that seemed to dance around me. Each rustle of leaves, every snapping twig, sent waves of terror through my body. But my efforts to evade the creature were in vain. Its keen senses were relentless, and it hunted me with a determination that was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. As I stumbled, it closed the distance between us, and I could hear the heavy thuds of its massive paws on the forest floor. I knew that my fate was sealed, that the werewolf's hunger would soon be satiated with my blood. I had reached the limits of my strength, and I fell to my knees, no longer able to run. The creature emerged from the darkness, its eyes locked onto mine, its hot breath steaming in the chilly night air. In that moment, time seemed to stand still, and I braced myself for the inevitable. The werewolf lunged, and a chilling howl echoed through the woods as it claimed its prey. The full moon, a silent witness to the horrors of that night, cast its solemn light upon the grisly scene. And so, my life ended at the claws of the cursed beast, leaving the villagers of Ravenswood to tremble in fear and sorrow, knowing that the werewolf would return with the next full moon, and the hunt would begin anew. My name is Matthias, a seasoned hunter and tracker among the villagers of Ravenswood. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, casting a golden glow upon the sleepy hamlet, I gathered my hunting companions, Hans and Eric. Rumors of a grisly attack had spread like wildfire, and it was our duty to investigate and protect our village from whatever malevolent force lurked in the shadows. Guided by the unsettling reports and signs of struggle, we ventured into the heart of the forest where the dreadful incident had occurred. The air was thick with an eerie silence, and the usual symphony of birdsong had vanished. It was as if the very woods held their breath, anticipating our grim discovery. As we followed the trail of broken twigs and disturbed undergrowth, a pungent odor filled the air, a foul combination of iron and rot. My instincts told me that we were drawing closer to the site of the attack. My grip on the handle of my hunting axe tightened, and my heart raced in anticipation and dread. The trail led us to a small clearing where the grass and soil were stained with dark splotches. The sight that met our eyes sent a shiver down my spine. There, lying amidst the debris, were the grisly remains of the villager who had fallen victim to the werewolf's ravenous appetite. Eric gasped, crossing himself, while Hans covered his mouth to stifle a horrified cry. The attack had been vicious, leaving behind nothing but a mutilated corpse. The poor soul's body was torn and mangled beyond recognition, and it was evident that the werewolf had shown no mercy. I could barely bring myself to look, but as a hunter, it was my duty to assess the situation. The victim's clothing was shredded, and deep claw marks adorned his flesh. The haunting crimson eyes of the werewolf, described in the tales, seemed to linger in the air, taunting us from the shadows. What foul beast could have wrought such horror? Eric murmured, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and anger. Only the cursed werewolf could have done this, Hans replied somberly, crossing himself again as he spoke. I nodded, my mind racing with the implications of what we had found. The legends were true, and we were facing a menace far more sinister than we could have imagined. The safety of our village depended on our ability to hunt down this creature and put an end to its bloody rampage. We must warn the villagers, I declared, my voice firm despite the fear that gnawed at my insides. Tell them to stay within the safety of their homes until the moon wanes. We'll gather a group and hunt down this creature before it claims more innocent lives. Hans and Eric nodded in agreement, their expressions resolute. There was no time to waste. We had to act swiftly before the next full moon unleashed the werewolf once again. As we turned back toward the village, the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting its warm embrace upon the world. But within the depths of Ravenswood's forest, an ancient evil lurked, and the chilling howl of the werewolf echoed through the trees. a haunting reminder of the terror that awaited us under the next full moon. The castle of Ravenswood, a venerable bastion of stone, stood regally at the heart of our village. Its ancient walls bore witness to centuries of history, and its grand halls whispered the tales of kings and nobles who had long since passed. It was within these time-honored walls that I sought an audience with King Frederick, my hope resting upon his support and the resources he might offer to combat the malevolent force that had befallen us. The morning had dawned cold, a nip of frost in the air, in stark contrast to the warm embrace of the sun that bathed our village in golden light. Despite the beauty of the day, my heart was heavy, burdened by the gruesome discovery we had made earlier. I knew that the safety of our village depended on convincing the king of the imminent danger we faced. 2 guards, resplendent in gleaming armor, stood as sentinels before the castle's entrance. Recognizing me as one of the village's hunters, they granted me passage with a nod of recognition. I traversed the castle's grand halls, adorned with ornate tapestries and ancient suits of armor, until I arrived at the king's audience chamber. The chamber itself was a tableau of opulence, but the atmosphere within was laden with tension and solemnity as I entered. King Frederick, a ruler renowned for his wisdom and stern demeanor, occupied his throne, flanked by his counselors. I approached, bowing respectfully before him. "Your Majesty, I humbly beseech an audience and your assistance in a matter of dire urgency," I began, my voice unwavering despite the gravity of my words. The king regarded me with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Speak, Matthias. What has prompted your swift arrival at my court?" Drawing in a deep breath, I recounted the harrowing details of the attack in vivid, gruesome detail. No gruesome aspect was spared, from the horrific condition of the villagers' mangled remains to the acrid stench of death that clung to the air, and the ominous presence of the crimson-eyed werewolf. The counselors exchanged grave glances as they listened, and a heavy silence cloaked the chamber when I concluded my account. "This creature, Your Majesty, is unlike any adversary we have encountered. It possesses unparalleled speed and strength, and its thirst for blood knows no bounds. If we do not act promptly, more lives will be claimed, and our village will be thrust deeper into the abyss of terror." King Frederick's countenance grew solemn as he absorbed the gravity of the situation. "Matthias, our hearts go out to you for the tragedy that has befallen your village. We cannot ignore such a dire threat. Tell me, what aid do you seek?" I nodded, gratitude swelling within me for the king's compassion. "Your Majesty, I implore you to warn the villagers of the imminent danger that looms over us. We must act swiftly to fortify our defenses and prepare for the next attack." The counselors engaged in hushed deliberations among themselves, considering the request. After a moment, the king raised his hand, silencing their murmurings. "Very well, Matthias, you have our pledge. We shall dispatch heralds to warn your village, and our resources shall be made available to bolster your defenses. May the gods guide you in this endeavor." Relief washed over me as I comprehended the king's support. "Your Majesty, you have our deepest gratitude. With your warning and assistance, we shall strive to safeguard our village from this monstrous menace." The The king nodded, acknowledging my gratitude. Go forth, Matthias, and may the shadows watch over you and your villagers. With the king's assurance in hand, I exited the audience chamber, my thoughts now focused on the preparations that awaited me. As I stepped out into the crisp morning air, I knew that the days to come would be fraught with peril and uncertainty. Yet with the sun shining brightly overhead and the king's support at our side, a glimmer of hope kindled within me, a hope that we could confront the darkness that had befallen our village and emerge victorious. With the king's blessing echoing in my mind, I set out through the village of Ravenswood, determined to assemble a hunting party that could face the dreaded werewolf. The sun had climbed higher in the sky, but the cold morning air still lingered, a reminder of the looming danger that haunted our community. I first sought out the village blacksmith, Bertram, a burly man with hands calloused from years of shaping metal into weapons and tools. As I approached his workshop, the rhythmic clang of his hammer striking the anvil echoed through the air. "Bertram," I called out, raising my voice to be heard over the noise. The blacksmith looked up, wiping sweat from his brow. "Ah, Matthias, what brings you here with such urgency?" "We face a grave threat, my friend," I replied, my tone grave. "The werewolf has attacked our village, and it won't rest until it's claimed more lives. We need your skills to craft weapons that can stand a chance against this monster." Bertram's expression darkened as he absorbed my words. "The werewolf, you say? A cursed beast from the old tales." "Yes, it's all true," I affirmed. "We need strong weapons to defend ourselves and protect our homes. Can you forge blades and arrows of exceptional strength and sharpness?" The blacksmith nodded, his eyes filled with determination. I can do that. Leave it to me, Matthias. I'll have the finest weapons ready by sundown." With a firm handshake, I thanked Bertram and moved on, knowing that we could count on his craftsmanship to aid us in our fight against the werewolf. Next, I sought out potential volunteers among the villagers. The prospect of facing a fearsome creature filled with dark magic was daunting, and not everyone was willing to take up arms against it. Nevertheless, I pressed on, visiting homes and speaking with individuals who possessed both courage and skill. One of the first to join the cause was Wilhelm, a skilled archer known for his unwavering aim. "I've heard the stories, Matthias, and I've seen the fear in my neighbor's eyes," he said, pulling his bowstring taut as he spoke. "If there's a chance to protect my family and friends, I'll take it." Others soon followed suit, stepping forward with their own reasons for standing against the werewolf. Some sought revenge for loved ones who had fallen victim to the creature's wrath, while others simply refused to live in fear any longer. As the day wore on, our hunting party began to take shape. Brave men and women, each with their unique skills, gathered at the village square, ready to face the terror that had gripped our home. In the late afternoon, the village councilor, Isabella, approached us. Her wise counsel had guided the village for years, and her presence added an air of authority to our endeavor. "I've heard of your mission, Matthias," she said, her eyes glinting with a mix of concern and determination. "I'll accompany your party to lend my knowledge and aid in any way I can." I nodded, grateful for her support. Your wisdom will be invaluable, Isabella. Together we will find a way to vanquish this creature and restore peace to our village. As the sun began to set, we gathered in the village square, our weapons honed, and our hearts united in purpose. The moon, a gentle crescent in the evening sky, reminded us that the full moon, with all its malevolent power, would soon return, but this time we were ready. With Isabella's guidance, Bertram's forged weapons, and the bravery of our fellow villagers, we set out into the night, a determined group of defenders, to face the werewolf and put an end to the reign of terror that had plagued Ravenswood for too long. The hunt had begun, and the fate of our village hung in the balance. As the hunting party ventured deep into the dark forest, their determination to confront the werewolf never wavered. Under the silver glow of the crescent moon, they moved cautiously, eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of the dreaded creature. Matthias led the group, his instincts as a seasoned hunter guiding their path. Back in the village, the night settled in with an air of trepidation. The villagers who remained behind had followed Matthias's instructions, seeking refuge within the safety of their homes. But fear still gripped their hearts as they listened to the distant howls that echoed through the woods, chilling their souls. Among the villagers who had stayed behind was an elderly woman named Agatha, known for her wisdom and experience. She sat huddled by the hearth, praying fervently for the safety of the hunting party and her fellow villagers. Her worry was not in vain. As the night wore on, the moon ascended higher, casting a pale glow over the village. Suddenly, a guttural growl shattered the silence, sending shivers down the spines of those who heard it. Agatha's heart sank. It was the werewolf, and it was near. In the distance, a mournful howl joined the growls, a signal to its kin, a sinister call to gather for the hunt. Panic spread among the villagers as they realized the true danger they faced. The hunting party was out in the woods, while the werewolf's pack was encroaching upon their village. Before anyone could react, the creatures descended upon the village like shadows, their monstrous forms barely visible in the dim moonlight. With lightning speed, they attacked, tearing through wooden doors and pouncing upon the unsuspecting villagers. Agatha clung to her rosary, chanting prayers under her breath as she tried to think of a way to protect herself and her neighbors, but the chaos was overwhelming, and she could only watch in horror as the werewolf and its pack unleashed their wrath upon her home. In the woods, Matthias and his hunting party sensed the change in the air. The forest seemed to hold its breath, as if the very trees knew the terror that had descended upon Ravenswood. Fear gnawed at their resolve, urging them to return to the village, but they knew they had to continue their mission. "We must push on," Matthias urged, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. "The villagers are depending on us to end this nightmare." The hunting party redoubled their efforts, moving with urgency through the dense underbrush. But the night was fraught with danger, and every rustle of leaves, every distant cry, threatened to halt their progress. Back in the village, the werewolf's onslaught was merciless. Houses were reduced to rubble, and blood stained the once peaceful streets. The creatures hunted with a primal ferocity, sating their thirst for blood and reveling in the chaos they had wrought. Amidst the carnage, Agatha found herself face to face with one of the creatures. Her trembling hands clutched the rosary tighter, finding courage in her faith. As the werewolf lunged at her, she held the rosary up, whispering a final prayer. But just as the creature's fangs were about to sink into her, a loud roar echoed through the village. Matthias and his hunting party had arrived, having sensed the danger from afar. Without hesitation, they engaged the werewolf and its pack, their weapons flashing in the moonlight. The battle was fierce and relentless, the hunting party facing a foe far more formidable than any they had encountered before. Though the villagers were terrified and wounded, they joined the fight, fighting for their lives and homes. Agatha, empowered by their bravery, held her ground, her faith guiding her every move. As the night raged on, the battle reached its climax, and the werewolf's pack began to retreat, their ranks decimated by the hunters' unwavering determination. The creatures vanished into the shadows, leaving the village in chaos and sorrow. Matthias and his hunting party, bruised and bloodied, regrouped to assess the damage. Agatha, filled with gratitude and awe for their courage, approached them with tears in her eyes. "You have saved us," she said, her voice trembling. "Bless you, brave hunters, for your valor and sacrifice." Matthias nodded, his heart heavy with the cost of victory. "The werewolf may have retreated for now, but we must remain vigilant. We'll protect our village, no matter the cost." As the night wore on, the hunting party and villagers tended to their wounded, their resolve stronger than ever. The terror of that night would forever be etched in their minds, but they knew that the battle was far from over. With the full moon's return, the werewolf would rise again, and they would be ready to face it, come what may. As the night wore on, the horror of the werewolf's attack on Ravenswood still fresh in their minds, the villagers sought solace in their homes. The hunting party had returned, weary but resolute, and their presence brought a sense of security to the shaken community. But fate had other plans, and the night had yet more horrors to unveil. In a neighboring village not far from Ravenswood, a similar tale of terror was unfolding. Multiple werewolves, fueled by the full moon's malevolent power, descended upon the unsuspecting villagers. The night erupted in screams and bloodshed as the creatures tore through homes and lives with savage fury. Amidst the chaos, a lone survivor emerged, a young woman named Alara. Her clothes were torn, and blood splattered across her body, but she managed to escape the gruesome fate that had befallen her fellow villagers. Fear clutched at her heart, knowing that she now carried the burden of a terrible secret. Ilara fled through the dark forest, guided by the distant glow of the full moon. Her mind raced with the images of the horrifying attack she had witnessed. Tears mixed with blood as she stumbled through the underbrush, her heart heavy with grief and survivor's guilt. As she reached the outskirts of Ravenswood, exhaustion and pain threatened to overcome her, but she knew she had to keep going. She had to warn them of what was coming, of the relentless pack of werewolves that had left her village in ruins. With the moon hanging high in the sky, Ilara stumbled into Ravenswood, her body trembling from both physical and emotional torment. The sight of her triggered a mixture of shock and compassion among the villagers who spotted her. Matthias and the hunting party rushed to her aid, guiding her to the village square. There, they gathered around the shaken survivor, anxious to hear her tale. Her voice quivered as she recounted the horrors she had endured, the blood-curdling howls, the gnashing of teeth, and the savage destruction that had befallen her village. "There were so many of them," Ilara whispered, her eyes wide with terror. "They were like demons, tearing through everything and everyone in their path." The villagers listened in horror, knowing that the same fate could have befallen them if not for the hunting party's return. But then, their eyes fell on a telltale sign, a bite mark on Ilara's arm, barely visible in the dim light. Matthias's heart sank as he realized the grim reality. "Ilara, were you bitten by one of the werewolves?" Tears streamed down her cheeks as she nodded, trying to hide the wound from their prying eyes. "I didn't want to worry anyone. I thought I could handle it." But there was no hiding it. The curse was in her blood, and with every passing moment, it threatened to consume her. The villagers whispered among themselves, torn between compassion and fear. "We cannot ignore this," Isabella declared, her voice steady despite the unease that hung in the air. "Ilara, we will try to help you, but you must tell us everything you know about these creatures, their strengths, their weaknesses, anything that might help us protect our village." Ilara nodded, grateful for the support, and she shared what little she knew about the werewolves' behavior and tendencies. Matthias and the hunting party took in the information, determined to use it to their advantage in the coming battle. As the night wore on, the village was on high alert, preparing for another confrontation with the werewolves. The full moon loomed overhead, a chilling reminder of the peril they faced. Ilara was cared for and isolated from the rest of the villagers, given hope that they might find a way to save her from the curse that now ravaged her body. The air was thick with tension and grief, but Matthias and his fellow hunters were unyielding in their resolve. They would face this new terror with the same bravery they had shown before, fighting to protect their home, their loved ones, and now one of their own who carried the taint of the werewolves in her veins. The night would be long and gruesome, but the villagers of Ravenswood were ready to stand united against the shadows that sought to consume them. In the frigid depths of night, a breathless hush descended upon Ravenswood. The full moon, a pale disk of bone white, presided over our village like a spectral judge. It bathed the landscape in a cold, ghostly radiance, painting the trees with twisted, elongated shadows that writhed like serpents on the forest floor. As I stood sentinel at the village's perimeter, my senses were keenly attuned to the world around me. The air was still, save for the occasional rustle of leaves disturbed by some unseen presence. My fellow hunters, their faces etched with a blend of dread and determination, shared my vigilance. "They're near," Eric whispered, his voice a mere murmur carried away on the night breeze. "Can you feel it, Matthias?" I nodded, the sensation of being watched prickling along my spine. "Aye, Eric, they're out there, lurking in the shadows, testing our resolve." The village lay shrouded in an eerie calm, the inhabitants huddled in their homes, their lanterns casting feeble glimmers through the windows. The memory of our previous encounters with the werewolves still clung to the air, a potent mixture of terror and defiance. In the distance, I heard the faintest rustle of leaves, like the whispers of malevolent spirits. The moonlight unveiled a fleeting glimpse of movement, a shadow, shifting through the trees, its form barely discernible. "They're circling," I murmured, my breath forming frosty tendrils in the cold night air. Testing our defenses, probing for weaknesses. Hans, a seasoned hunter with a hawk's eyes, spoke next, his tone etched with the weariness of one who had danced with death before. "Stay vigilant, lads. Don't let your guard waver for a heartbeat." Minutes slid into hours as we remained locked in a tense standoff with the lurking werewolves. They moved with a predatory grace, their forms melding seamlessly with the night. Their eyes, fiery orbs of malevolence, glinted with an unsettling intelligence as they watched us. The tension was palpable, a suffocating weight pressing down on us. The werewolves were masters of patience, their unwavering vigilance a testament to their relentless determination. The moon's silvery glow bathed them in an ethereal light, transforming them into phantoms that haunted the edges of our consciousness. Hushed voices exchanged brief words of encouragement among the hunters, the weight of our shared resolve binding us together. In this unspoken moment, we understood that we were the guardians of our village, the last line of defense against the encroaching darkness. Then, as the moon reached its zenith, a low growl, deep and menacing, resonated through the air. The werewolves were testing our mettle, their sinister intent clear. "They're coming," I whispered to Eric, my voice a mere breath against the canvas of the night. Eric nodded, his grip on his weapon unwavering. "Then let them come. We're ready." The night would be long, fraught with uncertainty and fear. The moonlight, our constant companion, bore witness to our steadfast determination. The werewolves circled, their crimson eyes locked onto our village. But we were Ravenswood, the guardians of our home. We would stand unwavering against the shadows, prepared to confront the terror that awaited us. The night wore on, a relentless sentinel casting its silvery shroud over Ravenswood. We hunters stood vigilant at the village's perimeter, our eyes fixed on the shadowy woods beyond. The moon, a glowing orb of pale radiance, bathed the landscape in an eerie, otherworldly glow. It was as though nature itself held its breath, waiting for the impending confrontation. Eric, his rugged frame barely visible in the dim moonlight, leaned against a gnarled oak tree. His eyes, sharp as a hawk's, scanned the forest's edge. Every rustle of leaves or hushed whisper of the wind drew his unwavering attention. He was our stalwart sentinel, a guardian of the night. Beside him, Anna, the youngest of our group, clutched her bow with trembling hands. Her fear was palpable, but her determination burned bright. Her youthful courage was a beacon in the encroaching darkness. A faint rustling emanated from the forest, the sound barely louder than a mouse's breath. We tensed, arrows nocked, and blades at the ready. Our senses were heightened, attuned to the slightest disturbance. Then, emerging from the woods, came the werewolves. Their forms were hulking, their fur matted and dark as the void. Moonlight gleamed off their gleaming fangs, and their crimson eyes burned with a malevolence that sent shivers down our spines. They moved with a predatory grace, their movements fluid as they circled us. They were cunning, these creatures of the night, and they sought to gauge our resolve. The Alpha, a massive beast with scars that spoke of countless battles, led the pack. His eyes bore into ours, a silent challenge. But we, the hunters of Ravenswood, were not to be cowed. We stood as one, our hearts pounding in our chests, our breaths visible in the chill night air. There was no fear in our eyes, only a fierce determination to protect our village. In the midst of this tense standoff, a voice broke the silence. It was Ilara, the villager who had survived the werewolf attack. Her voice, trembling but resolute, carried through the night. "I know you can hear me, beasts. I carry your curse, but I will not be your pawn." The alpha werewolf's eyes narrowed, a flicker of recognition crossing his bestial visage. Ilara raised her sleeve, revealing the telltale bite mark, now infected with the curse. "This curse is my burden, but I will use it to protect my village." The other villagers, peering from behind the safety of their homes, watched in stunned silence. Ilara had chosen to confront her affliction head-on, to forge her own destiny. Her bravery was a beacon of hope in our darkest hour. The alpha werewolf, sensing Ilara's defiance, let out a haunting howl that pierced the night. It was a call to his pack, a signal of their retreat. With a final, lingering glance, they melted into the forest's depths, disappearing like wraiths into the night. As the tension ebbed, we hunters lowered our weapons, a collective sigh of relief escaping our lips. Ilara's bravery had averted a bloodbath, at least for this night. The moon hung overhead, a silent witness to our pact with the cursed. We turned to Ilara, her face pale but resolute. She had earned our respect, our trust, and a place among our ranks. In the moon's silvery light, we knew that our battle against the werewolves was far from over, but together, we were prepared to face the darkness that awaited us under the watchful eye of the ever-present moon. The night was heavy with tension, a tapestry of moonlight and shadow that stretched over Ravenswood. We hunters, weary but resolute, maintained our watchful vigilance at the village's edge. The moon, a silent sentinel, bathed the world in its spectral glow. Yet, as we focused on the distant woods, we were unaware of the malevolent presence that had slipped through our defenses. The werewolves' diversionary ploy. They had sacrificed a few to lure us away, while the true threat encroached on our sanctuary. Inside the castle, the heart of our village, chaos reigned. The werewolves, stealthy as shadows, prowled the stone corridors. Their claws clicked softly against the cold floors, their lupine eyes glinting with cruel intent. The tapestries that once adorned the walls now lay in tatters, their vibrant colors marred by the savagery of these invaders. King Frederick, alerted to the breach, had rallied his guards in a desperate bid to protect our kingdom's seat of power. Swords clashed with fangs, the castle's once hallowed halls, now the battleground of a primal struggle. In the midst of this turmoil, Ilara stood alone in the castle's grand foyer, her transformation into a werewolf complete. Her eyes, once filled with determination, had become pools of feral hunger. She was torn between the human spirit that yearned to protect her village and the insatiable beast that sought to satiate its monstrous appetites. With a guttural snarl, Ilara lunged at the guards who dared to stand against her. Her speed was inhuman, a blur of fur and fury as she tore through their defenses. Panic and fear took hold as the guards fell before her onslaught, their screams echoing through the castle's stone corridors. I, along with my fellow hunters, burst into the castle, our hearts heavy with dread. The sight that met us was one of horror and despair. Ilara, our brave comrade, had been overtaken by the curse, and now she was a force of unrelenting destruction. "Ilara!" I called out, my voice a desperate plea, but my words were lost in the chaos that had enveloped the castle. With a swift and brutal strike, Ilara claimed another guard, his lifeblood staining the castle's opulent carpets. Her crimson eyes, once so full of defiance, bore into mine with a mix of sorrow and hunger. It was then that the realization struck me. The diversion, the attack on the castle. It had all been a meticulously crafted plan by the cunning alpha werewolf. Our village was under siege, both from within and without. As Ilara's transformation raged on, she leaped towards us, her jaws snapping shut inches from my throat. We hunters fought back, our hearts heavy with the knowledge that the woman we had once known was now lost to the curse. The battle raged on, the clash of steel against fur and fang echoing through the castle's halls. Lives hung in the balance, our village's future teetering on the edge of a precipice. In the midst of the carnage, a deafening howl pierced the night. It was the alpha werewolf, a sinister symphony that rallied his pack to his side. With Ilara as their weapon, they sought to claim our kingdom and the castle itself as their own. As the pack closed in, their eyes aflame with an unholy hunger, I could only watch in despair. Ilara's transformation into a monster was complete, and the future of Ravenswood hung in the balance. Chaos reigned within the castle's hallowed halls, a symphony of terror and violence conducted by the relentless werewolves. Moonlight seeped through shattered stained glass windows, casting macabre patterns upon the scene of horror. It was a canvas of crimson and darkness, where the screams of the wounded and dying painted an agonizing melody. Ilara, her transformation complete, stood at the forefront of the savage onslaught. Her once compassionate eyes had given way to an insatiable hunger. Her lips curled into a snarl that exposed her glistening fangs. She moved with a grace that belied her monstrous form, a whirlwind of death that tore through the remaining guards. My heart ached as I beheld this grotesque transformation of the woman we had once known. Each strike she delivered was a painful reminder of the friend we had lost to the curse. But there was no time for mourning, for the castle's fate hung in the balance. The alpha werewolf, cunning and relentless, orchestrated the assault with ruthless precision. His pack, a nightmarish collection of lupine horrors, followed his lead. Their eyes, fiery orbs of malevolence, locked onto us with a feral hunger that sent shivers through our souls. Eric, the steadiest among us, met the alpha's gaze with a determined glare. His grip on his weapon tightened, his knuckles turning white as he prepared to confront the embodiment of our nightmare. Hans, the seasoned hunter, launched himself at a werewolf, their clash a blur of snarls and strikes. Blood sprayed in feral arcs as blade met fur, the outcome uncertain in the chaos. The scent of death and fear hung heavy in the air, a nauseating miasma that clung to every breath. It was a battle for survival, a fight to protect our village's last bastion of defense. Alara, her once beautiful face now contorted into a grotesque mask, lunged at me. Her claws grazed my cheek, leaving behind a searing pain that fueled my resolve. I could see a flicker of humanity in her eyes, a plea for release from the curse that bound her. With a heavy heart, I struck her down, my blade finding its mark. Her anguished howl pierced the night, a haunting lament for the life she had lost. Amid the ruins of the besieged castle, we hunters stood as guardians of the night, our battered forms silhouetted against the eerie glow of the moon. The air was thick with the stench of blood and the haunting echoes of our recent battle. We were wounded but undeterred, determined to protect our kingdom at any cost. In the heart of the chaos, King Frederick, the wise ruler of Ravenswood, had taken up arms alongside his loyal guards. His regal attire was stained with the blood of his fallen men, a testament to his unwavering resolve to defend his kingdom. His eyes, once filled with wisdom and kindness, were now ablaze with the fire of a leader facing his darkest hour. The alpha werewolf, a malevolent force that had orchestrated this nightmarish siege, closed in on the beleaguered king. His pack, a relentless tide of fur and fangs, moved with predatory grace, their crimson eyes locked onto their prize. As the alpha approached, King Frederick raised his sword, his every movement a testament to his valor. He faced the beast, unyielding in his determination to protect his people. His voice, a defiant roar, rallied his remaining guards to stand with him in this final, desperate stand. The clash was swift and brutal, a savage ballet of steel against fur and claw. King Frederick, a lion in the face of the encroaching darkness, fought with an unwavering resolve. His sword flashed in the moonlight as he struck blow after blow, each one a testament to his determination. But the alpha werewolf was a formidable adversary, his strength and cunning unmatched. With a swift, deadly strike, he disarmed the king, sending the sword clattering to the ground. In that moment, the fate of Ravenswood hung by a thread. The king, undaunted, faced his imminent demise with a courage that moved us all. With a defiant roar, he lunged at the alpha, grappling with the monstrous foe. Their struggle was a gruesome spectacle, a clash of titans in the moonlit ruins. The alpha werewolf, driven by a hunger that knew no bounds, sank his fangs into the king's throat. A spray of crimson painted the stones beneath them as the monarch's life force was drained away. His eyes, once filled with wisdom and kindness, dimmed into lifeless orbs. We hunters watched in helpless horror as our beloved king breathed his last, his noble sacrifice a symbol of his unwavering devotion to Ravenswood. The alpha werewolf, sated by his gruesome feast, let out a triumphant howl that echoed through the shattered castle. With the king's death, the battle seemed to lose its fervor. The werewolves, their leader's hunger appeased, retreated into the shadows, leaving behind a scene of devastation and sorrow. We gathered around King Frederick's lifeless form, our hearts heavy with grief. The moon hung overhead, an unfeeling witness to the tragedy that had befallen our kingdom. The loss of our beloved ruler was a wound that would never fully heal, and our fight against the encroaching darkness had cost us dearly. As we mourned our fallen king, we knew that our struggle was far from over. The alpha werewolf and his pack still roamed the night, their hunger for blood unsated. We were battered and grieving, but we remained determined to protect our village, to honor King Frederick's memory, and to confront the darkness that had befallen us. In the wake of King Frederick's tragic demise, our resolve burned brighter than ever. We hunters, weary and bloodied, knew that the alpha werewolf and his pack still haunted the shadows of our village. It was a battle we could not shirk, for Ravenswood's fate rested in our hands. The moon, a silent sentinel above, cast its ethereal light upon the village, illuminating the scarred ruins of the castle. We moved with purpose, tracking the elusive werewolves to their lair, guided by the memory of our fallen king and the desperate need to protect our home. The alpha werewolf's lair was a cavern hidden deep within the forest, a place of primal dread where the boundaries between man and beast blurred. We approached with caution, our weapons at the ready, the weight of our mission bearing heavily upon us. The cavern's entrance was an ominous maw, the abyss from which our nightmares had sprung. The stench of the pack's presence hung heavy in the air, a nauseating mix of fur and blood that stung our senses. As we ventured deeper into the darkness, the cavern widened into a foreboding chamber. Bones, both animal and human, littered the floor like grim trophies of past conquests. The air was thick with tension, our every breath a reminder of the peril that surrounded us. Then from the shadows emerged the alpha werewolf, his massive form a grotesque specter in the dim light. His eyes, twin orbs of malevolence, locked onto us with a predatory hunger that sent shivers down our spines. He was a creature of nightmares, a force of darkness and death. Without hesitation, the alpha werewolf lunged at us, his claws slashing through the air. Eric, our steadfast sentinel, met the beast's charge with a fierce determination. Their clash was a whirlwind of fur and steel, a deadly dance that reverberated through the cavern. Hans, ever the cunning tactician, launched a volley of arrows at the oncoming pack, his aim true as they found their marks. The werewolves howled in agony, their ranks thinned by our relentless assault. Anna, the youngest among us, fought with a newfound courage, her bowstring singing as she released arrow after arrow. She stood at the periphery of the battle, her keen eyes searching for an opening in the pack's defenses. I too joined the fray, my blade flashing in the moonlight as I struck at the alpha werewolf's flank. The creature's howls of pain were a testament to our determination, but he fought on with a relentless fury. The battle raged on, a symphony of steel and fur, blood and fire. With each strike, we drew closer to victory, closer to reclaiming our village from the grip of darkness. But the alpha werewolf, a force of malevolence that refused to yield, fought with a ferocity that defied reason. With a final desperate lunge, he sought to tear into our ranks, to claim one last victim before succumbing to the relentless assault. In that critical moment, Anna's arrow found its mark, piercing the alpha werewolf's heart. He let out a guttural, anguished howl, a sound that echoed through the cavern as his monstrous form crumpled to the ground. The pack, bereft of their leader, retreated into the darkness, their crimson eyes filled with terror and defeat. We stood victorious, our breaths ragged and our bodies battered, but our village was safe once more. As the moon cast its final silvery rays upon the scene, we hunters knew that our struggle was not in vain. Ravenswood, though scarred by darkness, would rise again, and our fallen king's legacy would live on. With heavy hearts and a solemn determination, we left the cavern behind, our village's future uncertain, but filled with hope. The battle was over, but the war against the encroaching darkness would continue under the watchful gaze of the moon as we forged a path toward a brighter dawn. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the room, I settled into the old, weathered chair. Beside me, the fireplace crackled, casting a warm, flickering light that danced upon the faces of my wide-eyed grandchildren. Their eager eyes glistened with anticipation as they nestled closer, their small forms wrapped in blankets. "Tell us a story, grandfather," young Emily whispered, her voice filled with wonder. I smiled, my heart brimming with love for these precious souls. "Ah, my little ones," I began, my voice a soft, melodious cadence. "I have a tale to share, a tale of a village known as Ravenswood." Their eyes widened, and I knew I had their undivided attention. With each word, I wove the tapestry of the story, painting vivid images of moonlit hunts, courageous hunters, and the encroaching darkness that had threatened our beloved village. As I spoke of the battles fought and the sacrifices made, their faces mirrored a myriad of emotions: fear, awe, and hope. They gasped in unison when I revealed the fate of Elara and the noble king who had stood as a beacon of strength. "And so, my dear ones," I concluded, my voice filled with the weight of history and wisdom, "Ravenswood emerged from the abyss, its people stronger and united. The darkness had been vanquished, and the village stood as a symbol of hope and resilience." Their young hearts were filled with the essence of the tale, and they sat in silence, absorbing the lessons it held. But I wasn't finished, for there was one last revelation to share. "Would you like to know a secret?" I asked, leaning closer. Their eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Yes, grandfather," they chorused. I leaned back, my gaze fixed on the twinkling stars outside the window. "You see," I began, my voice a whisper, "I was there, in Ravenswood, all those years ago. I was one of the hunters who faced the darkness, who fought to protect our home." Their gasps of astonishment were music to my ears, and I couldn't help but chuckle. "Yes, it's true," I said, a twinkle in my eye. "I was a young man back then, facing the most harrowing trials of my life. But I learned that courage can be found even in the darkest of times, and that love, unity, and hope can drive back even the most fearsome of monsters." Their faces lit up with understanding, and they leaned in even closer, eager for more. "And so," I continued, "the story of Ravenswood lives on, passed down through the generations. It's a story of strength, resilience, and the enduring spirit of a village that refused to surrender to the shadows." As I concluded the tale, I could see in their young eyes the flicker of a flame, the spark of hope and determination. The story of Ravenswood had become more than a tale. It had become a legacy, a reminder that no matter how dark the night, there would always be those who would stand against it, driven by the light of love and courage. And so, as the firelight danced upon their faces, I knew that the story of Ravenswood would continue to live on, passed down through the ages, a testament to the indomitable spirit of those who dared to confront the darkness and emerge victorious.